I will show you a dozen ways of printing from Airtable without using any of these. I'll show you Page Designer though, because that's built into Airtable. Let's look at the base. I've got a table of products, a table of clients, some orders, and line items. Let's say we want to print the entire list of products for approval. Easiest way, click here, print view. Set your page size, layout, etc. When you click print, you would see a pretty decent layout of the entire grid view. Now this is one. You could also switch to a gallery view, and it has a different print layout. This is also a pretty good layout. The list one, it's similar to grid view. This is what it looks like. Calendar is good. It pops up a calendar. Good. So this is how you print from within the Airtable's data views. Now, when we switch to interfaces, you have option to print this page, which is pretty much same as printing from the view that you picked it from. So this is the list view. You could also have an expanded view and print from there. Now you can print a booklet of all the expanded views by clicking on print all. And this should look like a booklet of all those expanded views we saw earlier. Now let's go to the page designer. Edit layout. You pick your fields, drag and drop here, set the font size, weight, and so on. And you get your product card. You can print it from here, one per page, or a grid, or a list. You can print the current record or the record in the entire view. Say, for example, you want to print all approved products. You can do that here. Click on print. It sets it up, and you can just print it out. Now let's move to the more complex bit. Let's say a client placed an order. We have our orders page. Now I created a copy of the invoice here in Page Designer. Same method, you click on edit layout, you pick the fields. You can pick records from a different table. For example, in invoice, I would need to see the line items. Line items is in a different table. So you can just pick the data from the line items field and show which fields show up in here. So this is pretty good. This is all great. You can have a button here which opens the right invoice when you click it. Now I have an invoice with 23 line items. If you have too many line items, the page designer is not really flexible. It will cut off any extra records that it can't fit into the area that you have demarcated for line items. This is not going to suffice if you have a variable number of line items in your document. So let's switch to the more complex use cases. Now we're going to use make, and we are going to trigger automations. And that's how we're going to generate our PDF documents. So now I have a button to create a Google Doc PDF. If I click on this and wait for about 5 seconds, now it creates a version of it that looks pretty good. So I sent an action and a record ID. If you look at the formula, it's a webhook, and the action is create a Google Doc PDF, and the record ID is the current records ID. So whichever button I press, its ID gets sent over. Once it gets the record ID, it tries to get the record itself from Airtable. It gets all the fields from that table. Then it creates a document from a template. This is a Google Doc template. Now let's talk about templates. This is the product details template. All you need to do is format it however you want. You just identify the fields that you need in that template. You put it in double curly brackets. Now, when the automation runs, it finds those variables on its own and allows you to fill in the actual data. Then I need to send the data back to Airtable. When you get a response from Google Drive, it includes your web view link, your icon link, and then your export links here, which is application rich text file, application open document, HTML, and here's the PDF version of it. If I just go to this link, it downloads a PDF version for me. So this is what I will send to Airtable in the next step. And last item is a webhook redirect. This is only so that when I click the button and it opens a new tab, it opens the Google Doc in case I need to make a manual change. So the way you do it is set up a webhook response module, set it as a 303 redirect, put the location as the web view link here, and that's it. Now, how do we do the more complex things, like creating an invoice? Same principle. You have a button field with a formula. I've changed the action to create Google Sheet PDF and set the record ID as well. Now every path checks what the action is and it goes down that path. I'm using the same webhook endpoint, but I am triggering different branches of this automation depending on what action is linked to the button I press. You have your invoice template. Same double curly brackets to insert your variables. An invoice can have a variable number of line items. I put a unique code in the first column that needs to be filled. We will find this unique code in the document. We'll replace it with the text that we want to put in, and then delete any unused rows. Let me show you how it works. So here's the one with 23 line items. Click on this. It should open Google Sheet. And you can see how line items are created right in front of your eyes. Every single line item is being entered one by one. And once this is done, it would delete any additional rows which don't need to be there. Let's take a look at how it works. So we were at this stage, we had the webhook response and we were able to see the file being updated in real time. What was happening in the backend is it was iterating over every single line item record. It was getting that record from Airtable. It was searching Google Sheets for the first instance of that unique code that I entered earlier. It was looking for this code in the file. And since this code is in the template itself, it will always be there. The way it is set up is search for this particular code, sort in ascending order so we get the topmost rows, and then we replace that topmost rows with the values we provide. So it found the row number 18 as having the value. And then the next step is I put in the value. So now this is the step where I fill in the rows. Now, what about the extra rows that we need to delete? That is a slightly more tricky thing because I need to identify which row to delete. And unfortunately, it requires a spreadsheet ID. Now, spreadsheet ID is different from the spreadsheet name or spreadsheet index. So I have to add a module to list the sheets in the spreadsheet, find the name of the sheet. So I'm finding the name of the sheet is invoice, which is this one, invoice. It finds that sheet, searches the sheet for any instance of that unique code. But in this case, the sort order is descending, which means I want to find the rows from the bottom up. So I delete it in reverse order. The last step is obviously the same as Google Doc. I send that sheet back to Airtable. This is what it looks like in PDF. Pretty good. If you're exporting a Google Sheet PDF, you can use these URL parameters to redefine the margins and so on. So you get a decent formatting for the document you are creating. So when you add the export link here, you can add margins equals and pick the value from here. That's how you can format it. This is good, but there is a problem with this approach. The problem is I have 2 pages worth of line items. The second page does not have its own heading. So what do? We can create HTML using formulas. And this would be the most powerful method out of any tool that you have. It relies on something called CSS paged media. When you open an HTML, you are able to define a separate set of styles for a print mode than the display mode, which means you can do things like when you have a table that spans 2 pages in print, copy the heading over into the second page as well. So this is the line items. I just put it in a table row and 4 columns: product name, quantity, unit price, line total. Simple. Now this I will roll up into here. Simple roll up, simple array join values. And then there's the formula here. ChatGPT can help you build this. The idea is that you design your own page and you import the line items from the line items table and include it in the table here. This is where I am inserting the line items. I can pick the total amount from the same row. And there's a footer and so on, and that's it. You can copy the HTML here, go to W3 School Stride Editor, and paste it here and run it. Now, how do we set this up in the automation? How do I open this HTML and convert it into a PDF? Well, there is an automation for that as well. It gets the record and sends the HTML content back. It's just 2 steps. So if I click on it here, open invoice in a new tab, it just opens the HTML. If I click on print invoice, it will generate an invoice for me. There's also a way to automate this process. So I use a tool called Cloud Convert. Now, Cloud Convert is not a PDF tool. It's a more general purpose tool for doing a bunch of stuff. And we are using this to convert HTML into PDF. The benefit of Cloud Convert is it outputs a URL that you can then send to an attachment field in Airtable, and it will download the PDF from the URL. But this was our Google Sheet generator one, where the second page did not have table headers. Now, if I open this in a new tab, the automation will run. It will override this PDF. There you go. Now, if I look at this PDF, it's in the HTML format that we designed. The second table also has the table headers. Much cleaner approach though. Maybe one extra tip here. If you don't want to press buttons, switch to automations. Set it so that whenever certain conditions are met, so when the status is shipped and the invoice PDF is empty, it runs a script and it essentially sends the action and the record ID to the make endpoint automatically. So you don't have to press the button. And let me show you how. This one is shipped. I will just delete it. So now it meets the condition of invoice PDF is empty and the status is shipped. The automation should run on its own and it should give you the PDF in about 10 seconds. There we go. We have our PDF generated without pressing a button. Awesome. Thank you.